To begin, my project is on the company known as Barnes & Nobles, which was established in the late 19th century, and being a company that has stood the test of time for over 100 years, it really goes to show how solid of a company this is. And of course, there are several strategies that they've been using that have allowed them to stay in business for as long as they are. Early on, they aggressively expanded, setting up stores across the nation. This allowed them to create a name for themselves, which would eventually be known to become very consumer-oriented and innovative, easily adapting to the technological advances of the time. This is vital for the success of any business. Additionally, Barnes & Noble has faced several challenges, especially in recent years. In the 1990s, Amazon, which at the time was an online book retailer, they created quite the challenge and competition for Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble countered this by creating their own website in which consumers could purchase directly from them. This was another example of early innovation and quickly advancing with the modern technology. Today, media is one of the largest ways a company can reach its audience. And by being an early company to take part in that, Barnes & Noble once again established themselves as one of the country's largest and most reliable book retailers. However, they've also seen a decline in profits for several reasons. This is changing consumer habits and a decline in print sales. And these are two very, very difficult problems for any company. However, Barnes & Noble has a few strategies to counter this. A suggested one would be to engage in international marketing, in which they can set markets worldwide and not just focus on the United States. Setting up a worldwide market would allow Barnes & Noble to increase their profits overseas. However, as for the US, they can counter this by offering services that are only available in person. So in this slide, as previously stated, these are two problems that Barnes & Noble faces today. However, they do take several steps to adapt and overcome these. They, for example, have began to focus on quality and efficiency. Barnes & Noble is very consumer-oriented and takes great pride in establishing themselves as a reliable business that consumers can visit and not just buy books, but buy an experience. Because an experience is also something that businesses sell, not just a product, but how consumers are able to access that product and how they feel about the simplicity of getting it and also the experience they have. As for Barnes & Noble, they set up several community events to try and bring people into their stores in person. Additionally, they have cafes which are designed to have people more engaged in going out to a third space, and they don't have to buy anything. Of course, it is implied. They also focus on the quality of their products and expand into other merchandise, not just books, but also games and toys. I'd like to mention that atmospherics play a large role in Barnes & Noble's stores, in which they have comfortable seating, as mentioned before, cafes, in which people are invited to take their time and browse around a multitude of different novels, different DVDs, records, CDs, toys, games, and they can really enjoy their experience in person, which is something that you cannot get online. So for the future reference, as technology advances and continues to change, consumers, they could potentially see the efficiency and the reach that online retailers, specifically Amazon, have, and they could be attracted to that. However, Barnes & Noble's has seen exceed profit in their continued strategy, which is to focus on the customer experience and the quality of their products, in addition to taking the time to really refine an online market. See, when consumers are in person, it's the experience and the atmospherics that really draw them in and make them believe that this is where they want to shop, not online, where there's no other people, there is nowhere to sit down, there's nowhere you can really enjoy yourself. What Barnes & Noble's is offering is not just books and toys and all other merchandise and products, but it's an experience. Very consumer oriented and quality focused. As for future strategies, is difficult for any company to really understand exactly what consumers will want for the future, or even now. It can be difficult to predict that. Barnes & Noble's, however, has seemed to really be able to hone in on exactly what they need to do in order to keep customers coming back for all of their book and DVDs, etc. needs. Barnes & Noble is extremely successful, and although that they've seen several challenges over the past few years, it is unlikely that they will struggle in the upcoming future. And this is my APA reference. Yes. Have a nice day and a nice night.